Hello everybody and welcome to another video tutorial. You guys voted for this week and you guys chose for me to paint Mahr. Now this creature, according to the Encyclopedia Mythica, is actually a ghost essentially of a deceased family member or somebody who's essentially temporarily left their body. Now the interesting twist though for this character is that they're not exactly friendly ghosts. They disturb people's sleep, and they also, in certain cases, will actually drink the blood of the living as well. So they're almost vampiric. Another interesting thing is that they appear as moths. Now, since I didn't want to actually draw a giant moth-like creature because that would look fairly boring, I wanted the actual entity to actually be sending out moths instead to do his bidding. Now the moths portion you'll see at the end of the video because essentially I painted in one and I just duplicated it. It's a lot faster, it saves me a lot of time. That and the most difficult portion was actually to figure out how I was actually going to approach this painting because this is essentially a ghost. So I went through several different techniques to figure out what I was going to use for the final image. I actually spent about 7 hours on this image alone, just to get to a somewhat finalized state. It's a decent finished product. I would have liked to spend a couple more hours, but because of time constraints that wasn't feasible. However, the end product does look like a ghost. What I'm working on initially is essentially I've laid out my flat color, and I've decided at this point that I'm actually not going to worry about color until much later, mainly because color is much easier to change or modify using a color layer rather than paint it in immediately, especially if you, like me in this case, I didn't know what color palette I was going to use entirely. I did have an idea, but I wasn't 100% sure. So what I'm doing right now is, as you saw me do, is I actually plotted out my basic areas where I knew I was going to add muscle tone and detail, and now I'm just going in and refining it. Although I refine the information, I will go in afterwards and then actually tone back most of the information. The reason why I switch between the two is because I want to make sure that I'm showing the right amount of detail, but I also don't want it to be overpowering. So by adding the amount of detail that I'm looking for initially and then toning it back afterwards, I know that I have sharper lines and sharper edges in certain detailed areas, so that just mainly the color actually just fades out. This is a technique I use constantly just because it produces a better overall effect. So it makes my painting a lot faster, and in this case, by doing it throughout the body before I actually started finalizing all the muscle detail, I actually ended up saving a lot more time. Unfortunately, my computer crashed, so I actually had to redo that chest portion, so this is actually the second alliteration. So I actually lost about an hour of work thanks to my computer not liking the file. But everything turned out, so as you can see, I'm just smoothing out essentially the information I've already added in, making sure that it ties with the rest of the body, and areas that are essentially not the focal point, I'm not adding too much information just because it's not required. The human eye will automatically fill it in, so it makes sense just to focus on the areas that will be more visible. So because he's a specter, I do have him floating in the air. It just makes sense for me that if he's an entity and he's ghost-like, that he would have that ability to float. Now at this current stage, I'm actually playing along with the colors a lot to see which techniques I'll be using for the overall painting. At this stage, I'm experimenting a lot with the soft round brush to see if I like the effects that are produced. I'm not completely happy with the results, so I actually go in with the hard brush like right now, as you can see, and I actually start repainting in most of the information I already have there. Now, not everything gets repainted on, but a good portion of it ends up getting repainted in the end. And that's just because I didn't like the way the colors were working. So you'll see me actually quite shortly. Yeah, right now I've just started replacing most of the stuff I've already added in and just repainting it, but I'm sampling the colors because I like the color palette at this point in time. So I'm just using the same color palette, however I'm using the default hard brush to actually paint in all the information, and it's giving it more of that disjointed look that I'm looking for, because it's more loose, the colors are flowing more together, and it just works better for the overall image. So I'm just working out some of the lines, making sure that the right amount of detail appears in certain key areas and that the anatomy is correct. I'm just making sure that all the colors are consistent throughout, and that before I actually move on to the background, I'm just adding in some of those colors, popping out some areas, and then re-adding those colors into the background to help balance out the overall image. And those are the moths that I'm adding in right now. So essentially I created one moth, I duplicated it, and I just warped it. You won't end up seeing most of the information anyway from those moths, which is why I didn't spend too much time on it. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. So thank you and take care.